Prime Minister Modi, he doesn't like to meet the press. We presume the jail authorities were closing their eyes when Lawrence Bishnoi was doing whatever he wanted to do. Now, this is most disturbing because Operation Sindoor, militarily India won, but diplomatically Pakistan won. And our exertions to paint Pakistan as the epicenter of terrorism, well, we have not succeeded in convincing the rest of the world.
Ambassador KP Fabian, thank you so much for joining us on The Diplomat once again. Like we do always, there's a lot of ground to cover, so let's get straight into the questions. And of course, the big international headline that has come out from the week that has gone by is the escalation in the Iran-Israel-America war. Tehran has said that the Strait of Hormuz has been shut, and they have blamed America and Donald Trump for violating the ceasefire. How would you see the latest escalation in this war, sir?
Thank you for the question, because it is something which affects all of us, and India especially. Now, let us look at the big picture. I start with the question. When President Trump signed the MOU with such fanfare at the Palace of Versailles on the 17th of June, was he sincere? Was he serious? Because as I see it, of course, I could be wrong. As I see it, President Trump is trying to ride two horses simultaneously. One horse is diplomacy, the other is military action and threat of, more military action. Now, what will happen if you or I try to ride two horses at the same time? Well, we will both fall in between the two horses. And that seems to be what is happening with President Trump. Now, regarding the recent incidents, Iran shot at one or two vessels, one Qatari vessel carrying LNG to India and another Saudi vessel. Why did Iran shoot? Again, I'm not justifying what Iran did. All that we have to do, I urge, is to look at the big picture. Now, according to the Memorandum of Understanding, it is for Iran, in consultation with Oman, the two coastal states, to decide on the parameters governing the passage through the Strait of Hormuz. And of course, there is a reference to these two states consulting with the regional states, meaning the other GCC countries. Now, Iran, of course, holds the view that the Strait of Hormuz belongs to Iran and Oman. It is not an international waterway. Just because international trading goes through it, it doesn't become an international waterway. Now, what has been happening in the recent past is that some tankers, they were going through the Oman side That's point number one. Iran's management authority had said, that is not the route to take. Second, some of these tanks had sort of shut off their automatic identification system. That's not on. Third, in some cases, they were escorted by the US Navy. Now, Iran naturally took action. Then, Trump, anticipating that Iran will take action, hit back for 2 nights heavy bombing. Then the Central Command told Al Jazeera that they had stopped it. But the bombing continued. So who did it? Most probably Israel. So that is where we are. In fact, till the 28th of February, there was no problem. You see, things were smooth. In other words, it is Netanyahu's action on the 28th of February that consisted in assassinating Iran's supreme leader and many high officials, and including some of his family members, and the Pentagon joining in and killing more than 160 girls in a school. This is how the problem arose. Now, here I will tell you something interesting. The Netanyahu, actually his father changed the name. It was a different name, Polish origin, and Netanyahu means gift of God. What a gift, eh? Well, now Netanyahu's son, they're cutting out the Netanyahu part of it. One son has got his name changed to, let me see, Yonatan Horn, H-O-N. This is according to Haaretz, a prestigious Israeli newspaper. And another son got also, he deleted Netanyahu, part of it, because he was wanting to buy some property in the United Kingdom. But this name change is part of the story of Israeli leaders. Golda Meir, Prime Minister. Well, she was Golda Mabovich, Ukrainian. Even David Ben-Gurion, it was David Gruen, Gruen. So that is that. Now, as I said, Trump is riding 2 horses. Now, he is likely to fall, or he has already fallen, because now the oil prices are shooting up. And not only that, Trump has said that he wants to take 20% of the value of goods being transported because United States is giving protection. You see? Now, this is strange because his own Secretary of State has been saying that there should be no toll. You see? So, the big picture is President Trump was not sincere. And interestingly enough, the new Ayatollah in Iran had said that he was not sure that the Americans were sincere, but since the President Pezeshkian wanted to move forward, he reluctantly agreed to it. In Iran, there is deep suspicion of America. And another point we have to bear in mind is that Netanyahu still remains a very powerful figure. Now, what will happen? Most likely, I could be wrong, most likely there will be conversations and Iran can make a concession. Because according to the MOU, the nuclear matter is to be discussed towards the end when everything else has been more or less sorted out. Now, Iran can give a concession by agreeing to discussing it much earlier. And then Trump can go and say that, he got it. But even the nuclear matter, as I have explained previously, is a creation by President Trump. The JCPOA ensured that Iran will not make a bomb, and Trump walked out in 2018. So that is where we are. Meanwhile, of course, India is suffering, other countries are suffering. Let's pray and hope there will be sanity.
I want to ask about that particular incident. An Indian sailor was killed and 8 were injured in attacks on 2 oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. The Ministry of External Affairs, New Delhi, has put out a statement regarding that, and they've also summoned Iranian diplomats this morning, and they've registered a strong protest. How worrying is the latest escalation for India in your view? And do these measures like summoning the Iranian diplomats really help beyond a point?
To the last question, I do not think it will help much, because let's get the facts right. It is not that Iran discovered there were some Indian sailors and therefore it fired. No, Iran was firing at the tanker because, for reasons I stated earlier, it was not obeying the instructions, and it had probably shut its automatic identification system, and maybe it was being accompanied by a US Navy ship. So that is the reason why. And then don't forget, India has about 360,000 sailors. 360,000, almost 1/6 of the total number. And at any given point of time, 180,000 of them are on active duty. So when these things happen, Indian sailors are likely to be there. Now, let me remind you one more thing. I had said earlier that in our interactions, that when the BRICS foreign ministers level meeting was held, India had the opportunity to send a humanitarian mission to the Strait of Hormuz and asking both America and Iran to ensure that the mission, which will consist of doctors, nurses, including food and medicines, will be safe. India didn't do it. India lacked the imagination. And India should have taken the action, as I said, because if India is the global South leader, and India has deep interest in the matter because of the huge numbers of Indian citizens.
Let's move on to another country in West Asia that we saw come to headlines is Qatar. The former Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, passed away at the age of 74. And India has, of course, declared a one-day mourning, and India's Union Minister Kiran Rijiju has departed for Qatar earlier today. As someone who has served as India's ambassador to Qatar, how would you look at Al Thani's contribution in your view?
Let me put it this way. I was there when the coup took place. I mean the coup when Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa overthrew Sheikh Khalifa bin Hamad, that is his father, who was at that time in Germany. What happened was that 1995, early morning, one day, I got a call from one of our Indian nationals. He said telecommunication links between Qatar and the rest of the world had been cut off. And then I asked him, of course, we spoke in Malayalam because, our conversation might be overheard, though even speaking in Malayalam doesn't prevent, the Secret Service from monitoring it. But anyway, so he told me that, it can happen because there is going to be a coup. So I immediately called up my good friend, the American ambassador. I said, hey, are you home? He said, yes, I'm coming for coffee. Sped. Well, he told me, Fabian, if you want to say a coup has taken place, wait for 2 hours. If you want to say that this coup is taking place, well, you can send a message right now. Well, frankly, between you and me, I didn't finish the coffee. I craved his indulgence because we had no cell phone those days, Rushed to the office, got the cipher assistant, and sent the telegram to India. So that is how Sheikh Hamad, got onto the throne. Now, he has contributed tremendously to the progress of Qatar. Education. So many Western universities are there. And Qatari diplomats started speaking better English because earlier, when I used to go to the foreign office and calling on the foreign secretary, he will speak in Arabic, there will be an interpreter, but it's not the same thing, having the same language to speak. So that is one thing. Secondly, the LNG development, that again, Sheikh Hamad promoted it. And even, Qatar's contribution to conflict resolution, Sheikh Hamad started it. And another thing is that Sheikh Hamad got an American base, Al Udeid, in Doha, close to Doha, which is the largest American air base in the region. And I still remember he's telling me he had come on a state visit to Delhi. I had by then retired, but at the Rashtrapati Bhavan banquet, he told me, "Oh, Ambassador, we asked a friend who is very distant uh, geographically to come and help us with he said, a relative, because Saudi Arabia considers Qatar as a younger brother who should obey the elder brother." And so he said that they had the base. Of course, the base had started when I was there, and Qatar had paid $1 billion for building it. You see? So that is that. Now, the most important from India's point of view is that Qatar has, 25% of Qatar's population is Indian expatriate community, 25%. It will be about 8.4 lakhs or something like that. Can you imagine? And they are in all positions, management, engineers, chartered accountants. In fact, the chartered accountants and the doctors started their association when I was there. It was done in the Indian embassy, the Doctors Association, because the doctors were not very sure what will happen if they form an association. So I said, come to the embassy, I will invite you for cocktails, and then, you can, only doctors are invited. You can discuss it and pass a resolution. There was no problem. And also, it was easy for me to get peace from India for the Christian community. And the Indian community has done exceedingly well. There are many who are very prominent. I shall mention only two names. One is Dr. Mohan Thomas from Kerala. He went there as an ENT specialist, and the royal family, he treated. But then he sort of expanded his activities into business, and also he started the Birla School, public school. There are more than a dozen Indian schools there, MES, Muslim Education Society, the Ideal Indian School, and so on and so forth, And Mount Thomas also is, the president of the Indo-Qatari Association, Sports Association, and many other things. So he is very eminent. The other person is from the north, and Mount Thomas from Kerala. Dr. Prabhat Hajela, he is from IIT Kanpur, Stanford, and he is Vice Chancellor of the Hamad bin Khalifa University. So these are the two Indians, but as I said, there are many more. Our community is doing exceedingly well.
From Qatar, let's move on to some other developments from India's perspective. The first is, of course, U.S. authorities have confirmed that they will move to extradite Lawrence Bishnoi, who was charged with the killing of Sikh separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. This is, of course, part of a wider crackdown by the US on gangs based in India, including Lawrence Bishnoi and Goldie Brar. So, how would you assess the comments that US authorities have made vis-a-vis these gangsters who are based in India?
Okay. As we all know, Lawrence Bishnoi is in jail, has been in jail for quite a long time. And what the latest we hear from the United States is that LA, the Los Angeles office of the FBI, now tells us that it was Lawrence Bishnoi who was responsible for the killing of Niger, in Canada, not government of India. Now, I have a problem in understanding all this because according to LA FBI, Lawrence Bishnoi did it while he was in jail in India. Now, here comes the problem. According to our media reports, the Hindu and the Indian Express and elsewhere, Lawrence Bishnoi is in a very, what shall I say, sensitive jail, and he is under 24/7 watch. And still, the report says that he had smuggled into the jail, cell phones and other equipment. Now, how can you smuggle into the jail if you are such a high security risk? Two, how can you use these things if you are under 24/7 watch? So obviously, we presume the jail authorities were closing their eyes when Lawrence Bishnoi was doing whatever he wanted to do. Now, this is most disturbing. If we say that someone is a high security risk, we have to take consequential action. Now, one more thing. Sometime back, you might also remember, the New York Times had carried a story saying that the Attorney General in New York State had filed a case against a Government of India official who was trying to recruit a killer to arrange the killing of Panu, a Sikh lawyer, of course, Khalistani, hardened Khalistani. And the New York Times even carried a picture of someone handing over currency notes valued at $15,000 to the other person. Now, was it correct? Can we trust the New York Times? And also, why did the Attorney General in New York bring up charges against India? So, the whole thing is quite murky. But let me conclude by saying that we in India, if there is someone who is a high security risk, take action appropriately. Do not be, indulgent. I mean, treat him as a human being. I'm not saying that, he should be tough and rough. But if he's using his cell phone and arranging murders in India or abroad, that should have been stopped. Now, this should be inquired into. Tell me, have the media brought out this question? The print or the visual? I have not seen. Maybe I have missed it. But let's hope that the opposition MPs will raise this question when the parliament reopens.
Let me just seek a clarification here. So are you saying that the government of India's hands are not clean as far as the Nijjar killing or even Lawrence Bishnoi is concerned? Because like you sort of indicated that these acts cannot happen without some sort of a patronage by the state. So where would you place the government of India in all of this?
No, I'm not blaming anyone. There is a lot of fog here. My question is, if Lawrence Bishnoi arranged for the killing of Nijjar when he was in Indian jail, well, then the question arises, why was he permitted to do that? Let me put it this way. If A has the means, the power to prevent B from doing something wrong. And if A is not uh, making use of that power by preventing B from doing something terribly wrong, well, both A and B are responsible for what happened. This is ethics. So this has to be dug into. But as I said, I'm not drawing any conclusion.
Since you raised the media in your previous answer, let's come to that. Something that happened during the Prime Minister's visit, the Indian Prime Minister's visit to New Zealand, where a journalist asked an Indian diplomat, why doesn't PM Modi take press conferences? We've seen this play out not too long ago in Norway, where Helilin brought this question up. Now we saw, like the diplomat said, this was a deja vu. But what was more concerning is the reply of the Indian diplomat. He said that this is Rudrendra Tandon, MEA Secretary East. He said that Prime Minister Modi prefers direct, unmediated contact with the public rather than using media intermediaries. So would you, as a former diplomat, do you think this kind of an answer suits a diplomat of a democratic country like India?
Well, let me put it this way. I do not envy Secretary East Tandon's position. He was put in a most difficult position and he tried to give an answer. Let's look at that answer. What he said is that India's population is largely rural and that the Prime Minister wishes to be in touch with them directly. He's right. But we cannot take that argument outside India because if you are in New Zealand as India's Prime Minister and if the New Zealand media have questions for you, it is primarily for the people in New Zealand and also, these days everything is global, you know what I mean? So the argument that Prime Minister Modi focuses attention and time for communicating with the rural India, well, is correct, but it doesn't hold in New Zealand or in Norway as you put it. Now, let's look at the big picture. Prime Minister Modi, for whatever reason, I do not know it and I do not claim to know it either. He doesn't like to meet the press. So, that is what it is. Now, that is something which, of course, you as the media can dig into. You can seek support or assistance from the psychologists, but that is where it is. And let us also say that I want to make it clear. It is for the Prime Minister to decide whether he wants to address the media or not. Though I would add that it will be always good to interact with the media because through the media we interact with the general public. Not only general public in that particular country, but globally. So there is advantage in interacting with the media, but nevertheless, it is for the individual Prime Minister to take that decision.
But then, say, would you think that this question that came up in Norway, now again in New Zealand, and you saw a critical coverage of the foreign media when the Prime Minister was in Australia? A clip is famously going viral of an Australian reporter saying that this is as close to the Indian Prime Minister as you can get because he doesn't answer questions or he doesn't take questions from the media. Do you see this happening more frequently as the Prime Minister goes to other countries abroad? Many are calling this is like the Norway template, that the Norwegian journalist did it. Now every foreign journalist will do it. But don't you think there's some merit to that point?
It is likely that this question will have to be faced by the Prime Minister or the senior official who will have to speak in the matter again and again and again. And it is for MEA and the PMO to sit down together and figure out how best to handle such matters.
Okay, let's come to some domestic issues as we come to the latter half of the show. The one story that has been coming out repeatedly for almost a month now is the donation theft in the Ram Mandir. It's become a big political issue at home. You've seen the foreign media, some of which also cover this Ram Mandir donation scam. In fact, while we were speaking just a couple of days back, you had a job posting that was put out by the Ram Mandir Trust for the appointment of a new CEO. of this trust. And there's a lot of sort of murky dealings that have come to light through various media reports. The RSS, of course, distanced itself and saying that there should be an investigation. How would you see this Ram Mandir donation scam, sir?
Let me put it this way, this Chanda Chori, as they put it. Um, let's try to understand. We are told that it is the State Bank of India that send the men to, count the notes. Well, you and I have been to banks. Well, in my local bank, it's a private bank, they have currency note counters, a little machine, you know. And if I ask for, cashing a check, they count it with that and give it to me. In fact, I've seen the girl doing it twice just to make sure, it comes 5,000, 25,000, whatever it is. So my question to the State Bank of India is, how come they did not send some currency counting machines with these men? Second, are they sitting on the floor and counting it? Or are they sitting on a chair with a table? Well, my view, I could be wrong, is that the CCTV will catch better if you're sitting on a chair and a table in front of you. Now, question. Till now, the trustees or the members of the trust, who appointed the trust? Correct me if I'm wrong, Government of India. Okay? Now, do you think it was right on their part to be responsible for all these operations directly? No. They should have had a CEO. So I'm very glad that they are going to have a CEO. But again, let's look at the bigger picture. We have come across cases in Sabarimala, Kerala, Sri Padmanabha Swami Kshetram in Thiruvananthapuram, gold and all that sort of thing. So obviously there is need for tightening all this. Now how come that we have not been doing it? That is strange. Now last time we discussed this, I had said that the CJ, as Chief Justice said, there was a plea for an immediate CBI inquiry. And the Chief Justice said that heavens will not fall if a CBI inquiry is ordered immediately. And I had added, heavens of course will not fall. But the citizens' trust in the ability and willingness of the judicial system to set right the wrongs committed by the executive or anyone else, that trust might not be enhanced by the Supreme Court not taking the matter on an urgent footing. Now, the latest we hear is that, the UP government had constituted a SIT, a Special Investigation Team, and they have already submitted an interim report. The Supreme Court has asked for an interim report, and initially the Supreme Court said that it will send notices to the state government, the central government, and also to the Temple Trust. The Attorney General said, don't send it to the Temple Trust. Well, the Supreme Court still decided to send it to the Temple Trust, which is good. And then, of course, the Attorney General has said that it will be submitted in a sealed envelope. Well, I have some, what shall I say, reservations about the sealed envelope business. Because what is wrong in making the interim report public? The argument that those who are charged with the crime might get active and tamper with evidence. But the point is, We seem to have taken into custody a number of people who are responsible, allegedly responsible. Now, complete that job, take into custody all those who seem to be responsible, and then publish the report. You know, transparency is important in a democracy. And in this context, I also want to tell you how long has it taken? How long is it taking for the Ministry of Civil Aviation to let us know what happened with the terrible tragedy in Gujarat of that Air India flight going to UK? What about the poor families? Why is it taking so long? No, this is the wrong approach. A democracy should be prompt in sharing information that can be shared. I'm not saying that all information should be shared. In fact, you can have a redacted version of this interim report. But the sealed envelope culture, well, the sooner we put an end to it, the better.
Okay, sir. Last two questions, and we'll keep it brief. First is, of course, about the Army Chief. General Dheeraj said he's directed serving officers to prioritize the readiness and prepare for Operation Sindhu 2.0 and Operation Snow Leopard 2.0. This is what has come out in the media reports. Some on social media, of course, speculating it as, there's something around the corner. But would you agree with that, or do you think it's just part of how the army works to just keep their preparedness always spot on?
Let me put it this way. The Army Chief is right in telling his men to be ready for a fight. The military has always to be prepared. But was it necessary to tell the whole world that this is what the Army Chief told his men? I don't think it was necessary. Because by putting it out in this way, we are trying to threaten Pakistan. Now, is it helpful? I doubt it. Because Operation Sindoor, militarily India won, but diplomatically Pakistan won. And our exertions to paint Pakistan as the epicenter of terrorism, well, we have not succeeded in convincing the rest of the world. I'm not saying, in my view, the Pakistan is the epicenter of terrorism, and in this case of Pahalgam, the person I will hold responsible is a field marshal. I don't know whether we have discussed it. He had put out two tweets about it. One tweet was before Pahalgam, that there was a train terrible atrocity in Balochistan, when anyone who was appeared to be a Punjabi was killed. Terrible. And then this field marshal had said that, he was not field marshal then, he was general only. He had said that India was behind it without giving any evidence, and that Pakistan should retort. Now, some 10 days before actual Pahalgam occurred, he put out another tweet. He said that our Kashmiri brethren bravely fighting for independence should not be forgotten. We should help them. In other words, if whether it is Lashkar-e-Toiba or anyone else have done it, and I'm sure that they have done it, it is with the permission of the Pakistan military. To go back to what I said, if A has the ability and means to prevent B from doing something terribly wrong, and if B still does it, A also is responsible. And in this case, it is primarily A that is responsible. So Pakistan has been carrying on this policy of exporting terrorism, you see. But India has failed to convince the rest of the world. So India has to introspect what has gone wrong.
Right, sir. And my final question is about the special intensive revision. It's underway in all the remaining states. I went through that process last week. I believe you are in Delhi, and that process has begun in Delhi too. Have you filled the enumeration form? What was your process like, and what do you make of this exercise that the Election Commission is conducting?
Let me put it this way. It's pretty confusing. Some 45 days ago, we are in a cooperative housing society, and we were told that so-and-so will be coming on such and such a date and all that. Then I checked into it, and I was told that I had to give photocopies of uh, and originals of my Aadhaar, and the electoral identity, and one more. I think it was the the income tax card, the PAN card, and the originals. So I gave all that, not only of mine but also of my wife and our son. And 2 days later, the originals were returned to me, and I was told it's over, it's fine. The particular BLO block level officer will take care of it. Then the other day, I was told that another person is coming to the common room, and I went there, and she was very efficient. I filled up a form. I gave, this Aadhaar and other this thing, and I also was asked to give photographs. I signed. She signed. She has given me a set of copies. Now, I saw on the notice board that yet another officer is coming next week or something like that. So the whole thing is slightly confused. I'm sure it can be done more methodically. But coming to SIR specifically, I have some questions. Why do we do this in such an immethodical manner, first of all? Then also, as I said last time, if I did, this is linked with the way the government has said that the passport is not proof of citizenship. As I said last time, 1967 Passport Act says in plain English, passport is given to Indian citizens to go abroad. Okay. Now, by claiming, as MEA has done, that passport is not proof of citizenship, the idea seems to be to make such a situation so that the Election Commission of India will decide whether A is on the electoral list or not. Now, I think it is wrong, because once A is not on the electoral list, then A cannot even get a passport. It will be difficult. So I think the whole thing needs thorough re-examination, and let us hope India, I have always claimed, is a self-correcting democracy, will correct itself sooner or later, sooner rather than later.
All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador KP Fabian, for joining us on the show. Thank you.
My pleasure.